Oh, why do I really recommend that churches use automated speech translation? Well, you've seen the adverts for all of these different apps and devices that say that they can make you understandable in however many different languages. But is there any truth to that? And what does that mean to your church anyway? I'm Dr. Jonathan Downey, and this is Multilingual Church. You probably saw the launch of the Apple AirPods with Live Translate, or maybe you've seen these companies claiming that they can help churches reach audiences from around the world using their automatic system. We also see people like Apple saying that they are going to break down barriers with live translation, or Time Kettle saying that they can help you communicate efficiently and conveniently in different languages. The marketing is certainly convincing, but is it any good for churches? The answer is more complicated than you might think, but I want to explain why I regularly don't recommend this solution to churches. If you look at the laboratory results, so the results that the companies put out themselves and the results that you see in certain scientific journals, it looks like these devices are great. I've put two down here and you can see that the results seem to be good. One even concludes that they can be used for patient discharge instructions in hospitals. But there's a problem. Every time they've been field tested, and I've put some field tests in the description, like in the study led by Birkenbull and Lee and all, and in the Council of Europe and the World Health Organization, the results have been incredibly similar. They are simply not good enough. Accuracy ranges wildly depending on the language. The amount of time it takes to start interpreting varies wildly depending on the language. And in no case has a real-life field test said, you know what, this is doing a great job, just keep going. Whenever these devices are tested in real life, the flaws quickly emerge. But why is that? Well, let me explain how these devices work. First, they take what you've said and use automated speech recognition to turn it into text. You might have even used that on your phone where you dictate something into Siri or whatever. Then that text is fed through machine translation. So think Google Translate, Microsoft Translate, something like that. And then that text itself is turned into a voice. You might have done this in Microsoft Word, you get it to read aloud what you've written. It sounds really good. But that's not how human interpreters work. A human interpreter, sometimes even an untrained one, is not just doing that process. They're doing things in a much more complicated way. They're aware not just of what you're saying, but what it means to the people in the congregation. They're aware of your style of preaching. They're aware of how you're trying to communicate. They're also keenly aware of what works in the culture of those who are coming to your church. If I'm interpreting into French, I'm aware of what works in different French-speaking cultures. It's part of my job. If someone's come from a culture, they're aware of what you can and can't say in that culture and how you talk about certain terms. And they're also aware that if they don't hear you perfectly, there are certain things that they can dismiss. They know, for example, that you're going to be more likely to say Father, Son, and Holy Spirit than feather, sand, and holy spit. They're aware of what the kind of things we say in churches. This is why nowadays when people talk about interpreting, when the experts talk about interpreting, we see it more as a triangle. It's teamwork. The interpreter isn't just interpreting on their own. They're working with you. Your ability to work with them matters, and the audience are working together, all trying to understand each other. And there's a whole load of other things, other data, what people can see, what they can smell, what they're aware of the church, all feeding into how people understand. The reason why these apps aren't good enough is because they're based on a faulty understanding of how interpreting works. So they can't be good enough. They can't take in the context. They can't understand the history of your church. They can't understand how you preach. They can't even understand what's expected in the other culture. They're just going from words to words. And in interpreting, that's never enough. So what's the upshot of all of this? Well, If your church really doesn't have the financial means, or if the language profile of your church changes every week, or if there's some other massive factor that means that you can't get human interpreters at all, then yes, you can use these devices, these apps. But you have to use them knowing that there's a high chance that 20 to 50, even more percentage of what's being translated is going to be wrong. How much wrong output are you prepared to accept? Well, that's up to you. But you have to use these apps knowing that they're definitely not fail-safe, definitely not foolproof. And so the likelihood is that something was said wrong while you were preaching. So you need to make room for that. You need to be aware of that. If you can at all do it, it's always going to be much better to train up people from within your church to provide interpreting, and there are various ways that you can do it on a massive price spectrum. Drop me a comment and I'll give you some more details. In fact, I've linked to a video in the description that will help you see the variety that's available. If you really can't use humans for some reason, you might have to use these apps, but use them knowing that they're far from perfect and you need to make allowances from that. But if at all possible, if it really matters, if you really care about people, use humans. I'm Dr. Jonathan Downey and this is Multilingual Church.